Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Reading in the Dark. Byron here. So, it is March 2nd, in case you were not aware, and February, the month whose name I hate trying to say in front of a camera, is now over. I am not going to be doing a proper February wrap-up. As you know, February was a crazy reading month for me. I took part in 2 readathons back-to-back, Contemporary-A-Thon and then ThrillerAThon, and they were great, but because I was taking part in both of them and vlogging every day for both of them, I don't know why I did that to myself, they kind of took up all of my time, and I was doing a lot more video editing than usual, so the only books that I read last month were the ones that I read in those readathons, and since I've done wrap-ups for both of them, I'm not going to wrap up my month because I've already wrapped it up. But just to kind of very quickly sum it up, I read 7 books: Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday, Fresh Complaint by Jeffrey Eugenides, Up from the Blue by Susan Henderson, Mother of Invention by Chaley Wolfson-Widger, A Dead Djinn in Cairo, and The Haunting of Tramcar 15 by P. DeGilly Clark, and The One by John Mars. And of those 7 books, I ended up with a 4-star average, which is great. I had 2 3-star reads, 3 4-star reads, and 2 5-star reads, which is awesome, and those were Up from the Blue by Susan Henderson, which I adored, and The One by John Mars. Couldn't possibly be more different from one another. One of them is a dark, disturbing, emotionally fraught, hard-hitting contemporary about growing up with a mentally ill parent, and the other is a thriller that is based on a very speculative, science-y, technological, medical thrillery idea, and was almost kind of a romance as well. So they couldn't be more different, but I love them both. So those are the reads that I had in February, and they were great. But that's over, and this video is about March. So we're going to be marching into another month. Yes, I did that. Sorry. The first book that is up for me to be reading this month is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. That's a book that I selected for ThrillerAthon but never got to. If you don't know what Bird Box is about, it's actually kind of vague. It's about a woman and her children who live in a house in sort of a post-apocalyptic world where everybody has the windows covered, and when you go outside, which you really shouldn't do, you have to cover your eyes with a blindfold because there's something in the sky or something out there that if you see it, you will go crazy and become a homicidal, murdering maniac. The book begins as she decides it's finally time to get her kids into the rowboat that she knows is out there and to take them somewhere more safe. And I haven't gotten that far into it yet, and it doesn't explain exactly what's going on or what's in the sky that people are seeing, but basically that's the setup. It's very sort of mysterious and vague, and I think that's kind of cool. The next book that I'm going to read is another book that I'm currently in the middle of reading, which is Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. This is the first of a planned duology of fake history prequel books to the Song of Ice and Fire series, which is, of course, what the TV show Game of Thrones is based on. This is basically the history of the Targaryen family. This is the family that's related to dragons, and they're very, very blonde, and they inbreed because they're the only family left on Planetos, which is what I have recently learned the planet is called, which is not okay. They're the only family left that has the blood of the dragon in them. In order to keep their line pure, they just have to inbreed, and so some of them turn out crazy. And so the history of the Targaryen family is very, very interesting. And in the first sitting, I read 108 pages or something, so it was a page turner, but then I put it aside, and I can't remember why, but I'm going to pick that up again. The next book that I'm going to read is a book that I'm reading for my 2019 Read Harder, Book Riot, hashtag Read Harder Reading Challenge. There it is. And it's going to be fulfilling the challenge that says to read a book by a woman and or author of color that won a literary award in 2018. Washington Black by Essie Edugyan. This novel won the Scotia Giller Prize, which is an award for the best work by a Canadian author in that previous year. Washington Black tells the story of an escaped slave rescued by a white man inventor who takes him off in his airship, and they have adventures. It is very, very popular on BookTube. I'm sure you've heard of it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I love the idea of airships. I thought this was kind of an alternate history or steampunk type adventure, and it apparently does have some steampunky vibes, but it's not fictionalized in any way. Like, it's not a fantastical view or an alternate take on history. It does include airships and things like that, but it's historically accurate, I believe. So that's a book that I'm very, very excited to read, and it's one of the books on my reading read harder reading challenge list. So I'm excited to check another book off that list because I've only checked one of them off. The next book I'm going to read is very short, well, relatively short, and that's a play, actually. I'm going to read Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I'm a seasoned subscriber to the Shakespeare Company here in Orlando, and I'm going to go see Hamlet, and so I just wanted to reread it before I went. So it should be a rather quick read. And if you don't know what Hamlet is about, Hamlet tells the story of a prince, Hamlet, who's named after his father, who was King Hamlet. But he died mysteriously, and then his brother, Prince Hamlet's uncle, Claudius, becomes king. And gets on very, very well with his new wife, Hamlet's mother, Gertrude. And he basically learns when his father comes to him as a ghost at the beginning of the play that he was murdered by his brother so that he could take the throne. And Hamlet goes about trying to basically prove that this happened, and may or may not kind of lose his sanity in the process. And so does his poor bedraggled girlfriend Ophelia, and it's just a whole thing. So Hamlet, it's amazing. It's what the to be or not to be soliloquy comes from, and I'm really excited to see it, and I want to reread it. The next book that I want to read in March is another book that I previously selected for a readathon, and that is An Orchestra of Minorities by Chigozie Obioma, which I selected for Contemporary-A-Thon. This is by a Nigerian author who basically is a... Is the whole camera shaking? I can't tell. So basically, An Orchestra of Minorities is a modern-day sort of retelling of Homer's The Odyssey about a man who kind of goes on all these adventures trying to win the heart of his love, a woman who, in the very beginning of the story, he witnesses trying to commit suicide. He throws his prize chickens over the bridge that she was going to jump off of to show her how monumental the drop is, to stop her in her tracks, and then he tries to be with her, but he's not good enough for her family, and so he has to go to school, and then he goes to school, but then the person who's going to take him to school, it's like a scam, and then so he has like a whole adventure trying to win this woman's heart, and it's like the Odyssey, etc., etc. So this book has been very, very popular, and I've been looking forward to reading it, and I meant to read it for Contemporary-A-Thon. I didn't have time, so I'm going to read it. Okay, so then the next two books that I wanted to choose between were the Binti Trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor, or Freemen by Katie Simpson Smith. Now, the Binti Trilogy would have satisfied the Book Riot hashtag Read Harder Reading Challenge to read a book by an author of color set in or about space. And she is the first of the Himba people ever to be offered a place at Umza University, the finest institution of higher learning in the galaxy. But to accept the author will mean giving up her place and her family to travel between the stars among strangers who do not share her ways or respect her customs. Set in space, she's going to go to sort of a school for the gifted type situation, and things happen. So it's a trilogy, they're all novellas, and when all three of them are combined, it amounts to about 480 pages, so that's like reading a book. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to read that, or Free Men by Katie Simpson Smith. This is a book that I bought more recently on hardcover when I was sick, when I went to the bookstore during my sickathon vlog times. And I'm a sucker for historical fiction. This tells the story, it's a captivating novel, by the way, set in the late 18th century American South that follows a singular group of companions, an escaped slave, a white orphan, and a Creek Indian who are being tracked down for murder. In the few days they spend together, the makeshift trio commits a shocking murder that soon has the forces of the law bearing down upon them. I opened the book and I read a passage, and it had beautiful writing, and I don't remember what it was. I opened a random page, and I just liked the actual prose in the book. I liked the cover of the book. I thought it was beautiful. I heard really good things about this author, Katie Simpson Smith. It's historical fiction, and it just seemed really up my alley, so I just bought it on a whim, and I really, really wanted to read it soon, even though it's like not, if we're following FIFO, first in, first out, then it's not a book that I should be reading, but I really wanted to, so I thought I would just ask Prince Philip what he thought, which is, by the way, that's the name of my dog. So I did the tennis ball thing. I threw tennis balls with the number 1 on one ball and 2 on the other, and to see which one he would eventually choose and bring back. And this time he was very, very decisive. He picked one ball and ran right back to me immediately, and this is what happened. Bring me the ball. Bring me the ball. Bring me the ball. Bring me the ball. Where is it? Which one is it? Which one is it? Blah, blah. You did it. You did it. Okay, I think that's Freemen by Katie Simpson Smith, which I'm very excited about. Have fun. Go get it. So as you can see, he very decisively brought back Tennis Ball #2, which means I'm going to be reading Freemen by Katie Simpson Smith, which is just great. I'm super excited about that book. That's going to be awesome. And it's only 368 pages compared to the 480 pages that I would have needed to read had I embarked on the adventure of reading the entire Binti Trilogy all at once. So maybe that's good. The next book that I'm going to read is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I have had this on my TBR for a while, and it just keeps getting shuffled along. I'm putting off reading this book almost as badly as George R.R. Martin is putting off writing the last one. Yeah, so basically this is the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, which is what Game of Thrones, the TV show, is based on. This is a fantastical sort of Iron Age other world. So this is a world that's very much like ours in the past, but it has a common knowledge of a history that is not real in our world, a history of dragons and magic that is embroiled, I'm going to use that word twice in one video, in a war for the throne. There's one throne for one king who rules all 7 kingdoms. But then while that's all happening, there are also these like ice zombies, the White Walkers, they're called. And so it's really, really fun on the TV show because it looks like you're just watching any other historical sort of violent Iron Age epic, but then these magical and fantastical elements start coming in. So I just described Game of Thrones to you, which is maybe ridiculous, but it occurred to me when I was getting ready to make this video that maybe some people don't know what it's about. I know I was surprised when I started watching the show that there were fantastic magical elements to it, because I might be the only one, and maybe I'm an idiot, but I did not know that. I really just thought it was sweaty people with swords and beards. I didn't realize there were magical elements. So there are, and that's why I really enjoy it, and I'm going to read the book. So after I finish the 700 or something page prequel, Fire and Blood, I'm going to try and read A Game of Thrones, which is the first book in the series proper. The final book that I have selected to read in the month of March, and I just turned into Katharine Hepburn, and I'm not really sure why, is The Red Tree by Caitlin R. Kiernan. So this satisfies the Book Riot #Read Harder Reading challenge to read a book by or novel by a trans or non-binary author. Sarah Crow left Atlanta and the remnants of a tumultuous relationship to live in an old farmhouse, I just made that up, to live in an old house in rural Rhode Island. Within its walls, she discovers an unfinished manuscript written by the house's former tenant, an anthropologist obsessed with the ancient oak growing on a desolate corner of the property. Tied to local legends of supernatural magic, as well as documented accidents and murders, the gnarled tree takes root in Sarah's imagination, prompting her to write her own account of its unsavory history. And as the oak continues to possess her dreams and nearly all of her waking thoughts, Sarah risks her health and her sanity to unearth a revelation planted centuries ago. So I think this is kind of a horror novel. Maybe it's a psychological horror novel, but it has historical elements, and it's got a haunted tree, and like a book about someone who finds an ancient manuscript hidden in the walls of an old house. I mean, come on. That's awesome. So this satisfies that challenge for Read Harder, and it's a book I've wanted to read for a long time. It was something that I heard about on a couple of other people's booktube channels, and it just sounded great to me. So that's the last book that I have chosen for this month, which brings my total in March to a hopefully planned for 8 books for March, which is great. That's 2 books a week, and that is what I need to continue to do in order to stay on track for my yearly goal, which is to read 100 books in 2019, which I'm on track to do, by the way, because I'm awesome. So thanks. I don't have a lot going on in March that I'm aware of at this moment. I'm not doing any readathons. I have readathoned myself into a non-readathon state or corner. So those are my reads that I have chosen to read in March. I think it's going to be great. The only other thing I thought I might maybe bring up in this video, which I will probably discuss at more length in another video, is the fact that I recently made a purchase. So I have been getting really tired of my Kindle. I've been getting really tired of the lagginess because it has a lot of books on it, and getting really tired of what it's like to highlight and write notes in some of the books as I'm reading them, which, you know, the highlighting and the note-taking on Kindle is one of the main reasons that I love reading ebooks. And so that was really getting on my nerves, and I thought maybe I would look at upgrading it, and I finally decided to bite the bullet and just try, because I've never tried, to read on an iPad. So I have purchased this iPad mini, and you know, it's a full color LCD tablet and it does other things, but I have read a little bit on it already. Bird Box, I have been reading on it, and I'm really enjoying reading on it. I don't want a full size iPad because it's just too big to be reading on. It's too heavy and unwieldy. This is sort of the perfect size, and I really enjoy the way the Kindle app works on here. It's also nice that I can read books from anybody on any app that I want. So I'm giving this a shot for right now, and we'll see how it contributes to or hampers my reading in March. I don't know. It could be interesting. So I'm really glad that my dog chose the book for me that he chose, and that's it. That's my TBR for March. If you have any comments or suggestions or ideas or anything that you'd like to share with me about the books that I have just mentioned, please feel free to write them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you loved this video and you would like to see more content like this in the future, you can subscribe to Reading in the Dark and hit that little bell icon, which would be even more awesome because then you would always be notified whenever I post new content, which I'm trying to do twice a week. And as I have been saying recently, I have said in the past that I post on Mondays and Fridays, but because of all the crazy readathon-ness that's been happening, my schedule has been all out of whack. So I don't know when I post, but twice a week. And I've been doing actually rather well with that in this so far this year. So also in March, I'm apparently going to have a really hard time speaking and putting sentences together. So you're welcome. So that is my video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you very much for being a part of this little bookish conversation. And until next time, I will be here in the dark reading. Bye, guys.